Welcome, everybody. 6 o'clock, we'll kick things off. Welcome to our conversation series. We've been doing these on Monday evenings like this one, inviting guests to join us for a little half-hour Q&A session, a little introduction to some of the interesting voices who help us understand, interpret, learn more about the city of Chicago, some of its history, its architecture, some of its odds and ends. And we got one of my favorite voices on what I guess we'd call Chicago Twitter joining us this evening, Paul Dailing, who's a man of many talents. He's a freelance writer and also the creator and host of the Chicago Corruption walking tour and podcast. I'll let him talk a little bit more about his work and kind of introduce himself in a minute here. But yeah, just wanted to mention the talk tonight coming to you from Chicago Detours. My name is Alex Bean. I've been happy to host a lot of this stuff over the past couple of months. And we're excited to hear a little bit more from Paul about what his work is. And if you've got questions for him, of course, feel free to type those into the chat box. I'm going to mute everybody except for Paul, actually, just to make sure that we don't have any mysterious background noises kind of flying through. But feel free to use the group chat if you've got any questions, and we'll see if we can even carve out a couple of moments towards the end if you want to, if there's any questions that we want to save until that time. And then I've got a couple of tabs and things like that that I can share if Paul needs them. But other than that, I will turn it over to our guest of the evening. Go ahead, Paul.
Hi, how's everyone doing today? You're all muted, so that's sort of rhetorical, but feel free to tell in the chat box there. Anyway, Alex asked me here, I guess, to talk a little bit about Chicago, a little bit about politics, a little bit about tourism. So for some background on myself, I'm a former journalist. I currently have a position with an environmental nonprofit that absolutely does not know I'm doing this. And my boss is gonna, and that's gonna stay that way. Thank you. So as a journalist, there's being a journalist in 21st century America means long periods of what's the word? Unemployment. And so during one of those periods of unemployment or sub-employment, whenever I was, out of work or freelancing was going short, how everyone's got their job they go back to, like they go back to waiting tables or they go back to, whatever. I'd always go back to tourism. My first job when I moved to Chicago after college was, I was a deckhand and later tour guide for Wendella Boats, doing the, to your left Sears Tower, 1,454 feet or 404 whatever meters. Yep. Doing the boat tours. And so, I got a job back doing that again to help make ends meet. And I sort of forgot how much I liked it. And I missed it. And it's tourism is a fun industry. You get to tell people about a place you care about. And then they give you a lot of money afterwards. Tip your tour guides. Whenever the world returns to normal, slip all your tour guides $5, $10. Just do it. You're contributing to the economy, most notably the economy of the nearest bar to where the docks are.
And I will say, the 2 times I've led in-person tours since earlier this year, I have actually been tipped rather nicely by the folks who I was showing around town. So I think that philosophy is holding true. Anyway, not to interrupt, go ahead.
When a pandemic that is keeping people away from crowds and public places is not good for people whose livelihood depends on taking public places, people through, crowds through public places.
Yep.
So that's my PSA for the moment. Yep. Yes, Bill, it is the Billy Goat. We would drink there until we got sick of not being able to drink in a place with no windows. Or just give us a damn window. And it's a subterranean bar for those people not familiar with Chicago. So then, I started thinking about this time, this was 2016 or so, a lot of, tours were sort of popping up where you could do your own thing without, advertise online and everything. Actually, I actually did a couple of Chicago Detours tours, so that was part of this. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine who is a geologist was doing a tour, just as a little thing, a weekend, showing people the fossil. He no longer does it. He's moved from the area, but the fossil tour of Chicago. So he'd go take people all the old buildings and point out, like, oh, here's a gastropod that's, you know, in the marble and of Macy's, Marshall Fields. Or here's a old bivalve that, you know, it was a pretty cool tour, and he was just doing it. So I thought, I could just do it. But what do I know? So I'd been a reporter, or was a reporter at the time, and tour guide, so sort of came together with the Chicago Corruption Walking Tour, which ran from 2016 till last summer was the last time I did it. And it was pretty successful. It was a nice little side hustle. Got on NPR, which was cool. Marketplace, morning edition. That was super fun. Got a lot of calls from people I went to high school, or texted, emailed from people I went to high school with, so that was neat. And then, so if you've got really good mics, you can probably hear a thumping from the other room. And that thumping is turning 2 in about a week. And part of the reason I stopped doing the in-person tours, because I had a kid, and, you know, he's a lot more fun to, no offense, I love tourists, love showing people around, but, you know, the peak tourism time is weekends, and that's also peak parenting time, because I had, you know, a day job as well. So stopped doing the in-person tours, and last season was my last one. And then I was going to start off with a big podcast, just everything I wanted to do the whole time. Because, you know, you're showing people around town, you got the crowds, the people are tired, people are getting bored, it's a hot day, etc. You know, you do like 10, 15 minutes, and that is extensive. Yeah. On a particular spot. I think Bill, strangely enough, was actually there for my first tour, because I did a dry run with people I know, and yeah, that, like, we called it after 5 hours. I had to tighten the tour down to 3 hours, because there were just too many stories of Chicago corruption. Bill says beta dry run was fun. Death march. Yes, it was a death march, and I also yeah, there was some, at one point I accidentally took, this was the dry run tour, I accidentally took a wrong turn and led everyone into a homeless encampment on Lower Wacker Drive by mistake. So I learned from that experience, shall we say.
Of course.
So I got ready to do this podcast, which was just a deep dive, everything I wanted to do, but time and people's endurance and people's patience wouldn't allow. It was going to be like 30 to 40 to an hour per episode, digging deep into these places. And then COVID. So I did COVID-19 sort of hit, and I got about 6 episodes done. Then I sort of decided, well, I'm going to share a link with everyone. So I got 6 episodes done. There we go. And then the libraries closed and everything closed, and online resources didn't really have what I was looking for. I like to, doing the historical research for this stuff, I like to go a little beyond, because basically for various reasons that I can and might get into, a lot of the
put that
online, so you can see the 6 ones I did, and then below that there's links to the ones that I plan to do and the locations there. And Alex, if you could click on any one of the ones that are the 6 ones.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's like little information and links and everything. And then if you could click on one of the other ones, one of the other locations. Yeah, that is like the
Block 37 story.
The ones I had planned, you know. So, yep. Oh, and another thing I forgot to say was one of the big things about the podcast was that you were supposed to listen in the places, and, you know, you didn't have to, but it's sort of a gimmick. It was just like, here, go here, sit here, and everything planned out, you know, where people can sit, and then it'll be like, turn to your left and you'll see this, turn to your right and you'll see that, and get in there. And because I really wanted to get people involved in the city. Yeah. You know, you can sit at home and listen, to historical stuff. And there's some great history podcasts out there. But I wanted to be the one that would get people. And it wasn't like, here, go ride the elevator up the Sears Tower. It was like, hey, go to Coco's famous deep fried lobster, which is a real soul food restaurant right by the prison downtown. Fantastic food. But it used to also be the headquarters in the 1800s of, of these two corrupt aldermen that you can see in cartoon form in getting Bathhouse Coffin. So it's trying to get people to like go into explore beyond the, look at Sears Tower sort of stuff. Here's the bean, etc. That wasn't you, Alex. That wasn't.
No.
And so that definitely was. So the two things that sort of combined to put the podcast on hiatus were the resources I needed weren't available. The real due to many reasons, a lot of the newspapers in Chicago's history are not available online or are available in a limited fashion. There's a lot of reasons for that. Sun-Times, for example, had this a-hole in charge of it for a while, Michael Farrow, before he decimated the Trib, he decimated the Sun-Times. He got rid of their online archives. And then, other places, they didn't have the rights to it. So even if you have library access, the places you could go to find all these old articles were either the Chicago Tribune's online website or the online archives, which are available through the library, or the library microfilm room. The library microfilm room was closed, and the Chicago Tribune archives were the Chicago Tribune, which historically has been sort of a right-wing mouthpiece.
Right.
So things were sort of suspect. I mean, no more than other newspapers of the 1800s, 1900s, today, frankly, very partisan things.
But if you're only getting the one.
If you're only getting the Tribune's version, if you're only getting Colonel McCormick's history, you ain't getting what's really happening, especially with some more politically fraught things, some racially fraught things. It's like, maybe you don't want the right-wing mouthpieces as your only voice. And then also part of it was to get people to go to these places. And so it'd be like really sort of disingenuous to like have audio of what it sounds like inside of Coco's, and then get people's mouth watering about don't get the deep fried lobster when it opens. It's fine. It's a little gimmicky, but the rest of it's good. It's good soul food. Mild sauce, people.
The atmosphere, the experience of the places.
Yeah. And so it's sort of crappy to, get people all watering for it and say, hey, you'll go there again someday. Yeah. Unless it goes out of business.
Yeah, we've run into similar sort of headaches trying to put together our stuff for the past couple of months. Yeah. And without those direct resources, makes total sense. Why hiatus would make sense.
So hiatus, I have not been to Skyride. I keep wanting to go. Sorry, I'm reading the Zoom chat comments. I keep meaning to go, and then this all anyway. But hey, it'll be a stop when I go back. That place will outlive cockroaches and Twinkies. So put the thing on hiatus, and then I was like, okay, I'll be back in a couple weeks.
And then
couple more weeks. But it's really important that this has dragged on so long, because we don't want people to tell us to wear a piece of fabric over our noses because communism or something. I'm not really sure how that's going. Anyway, so Alex Eddy, hi Alex, he's been on the tour. He has a question. Beside the MCC, did you run into any security quirks on the tour? And what he's talking about is the Metropolitan Correctional Center, which if you've ever been in downtown Chicago, is this giant triangle-shaped prison. It's a federal prison. The woman from Orange is the New Black, the woman who wrote the original book that was based on, she did part of her sentence there, not the stuff that made it into the TV show, but and so if you're running a federal prison in downtown Chicago, you don't really like people hanging out in your courtyard, pointing at the building and and doing stuff. They were a little suspicious, so sometimes they'd give me grief about it. So I like, hey, move on. Even if it's a public area, move on. So did I run into a security court? So anyway, so they were sort of depending on who was stuck
around
on weekend shift. Yeah, I mean, so they try and push you off sometimes, but.
I actually once had a security guard tell one of my tour guests that they weren't allowed to take a photo of the outside of a building.
I've had that too. They told me that. I'm like, no. It's
how that
photo.
Anyway, yeah. I think I laughed out loud at that particular security guard.
Yeah, you get all that. No, I haven't had many security quirks that I've run into. That's the main place. I've had many interesting things I've ran into during the tour. One time I was doing the tour, and when I got to Federal Plaza, which if you've been to Chicago, it's by all the courthouses, the big black buildings, Federal Courthouse. It's where the Chicago 7 trial was held.
Got the big flamingo sculpture. Yep.
Yeah, big red sculpture called the Flamingo. And it, so one time I was there, and there was a anti-GMO protest there. And across the street, there was a pro-GMO protest. And they were just yelling at each other. And I'm trying to talk about Rod Blagojevich at the time, and they're just yelling at each other. One time at Daley Plaza, which is famous for, the Picasso, great scene, the Blues Brothers, etc. They were doing a recreation of the parade scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he just sort of, where the one where it's like the fake German parade, and he just sort of comes in and starts singing Twist and Shout.
Was that Richard Branson that did that? The billionaire who owns?
No, it was like the anniversary or something, some anniversary of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And and so they did it like a recreation, and it was like, but the only like celebrities they could get who appeared in the movie, I think it was like the guy who played Ferris's dad, and so he just sort of came out. I mean, he's just like a local theater actor at this point. He just came out, like sort of waved awkwardly, and then they like recreated that horrible parade.
And you're trying to move people through there and point out, that's fantastic.
So yeah, I run a lot of weird stuff. Anyway.
I was going to ask, just because I love, you've had a couple of times on Twitter where you've shared sort of like some of the epic stories you've collected from over the years for the tour and for the podcast. My particular favorite was I think it was the husband of the former clerk of the Cook County Criminal Court who owned some kind of like goat meat processing company. And they got caught up in some kind of huge.
So this is one of the.
Go ahead, because you know the story better than I do.
This is one of
there's favorite corruption stories.
This is alleged corruption, and this is the type of story where it's still sort of a thing, sort of. So it's just you have to say allegedly every other couple words, because otherwise they will come and get you. It's like you got to say Kanahora, but like instead of Kanahora or Knockwood, it's like you just have to say allegedly. Yep. Otherwise, the journalism demons will drag you to journalism hell, also known as the Tribune. So what that story is Dorothy Brown, who's the Cook County clerk, and she is not known as being good at her job. The place is a mess. It's hard to get records. It's like the records office for the entire Cook County court system. They still, I'm not making this up. God damn it, Bill. I was building up to carbon paper. They still use carbon paper. I was building. That was drama. You have ruined drama, Savage. So she had all these weird fundraisers and everything where you could pay $10 and wear jeans. You could make a donation to her campaign contribution, wear jeans for Casual Friday, all these other sort of weird things. And there's a lot of questionable money flying around. I think you don't have to add allegedly to that section. And one of my more annoyances was that. This is a little technical, and I'll be diligent on time. But she, Illinois has gone to digital filing for court cases. And there's this, I'll be very light, but there's a state-approved front end. The system for entering it has to be statewide. So if you're a lawyer in Kane County, it's the same system if you're filing in Cook County, in Joe Davies County, et cetera. Back end, you can do whatever the hell you want. That's up to the discretion of the Cook County of the county clerk. And so most of the counties just went with the same company because the stuff worked better together, which is a little suspect, but whatever. Cook County, Dorothy Brown moved heaven and hell to try and get the front end system to work with the back end system, which were like sort of buddies of hers or companies she worked with for a long time. So it's that weird zone where you can say cronies if you're writing an article against it, or company that has a long time contract, you know. And the software systems just didn't work together. So Cook County blew the deadline for going digital filing. They're still mucking around with carbon paper and all this. Bad at her job, and that's not alleged. But she's been under federal investigation for a long, long time. And one of the allegations was that she and her husband were laundering money through a fictitious goat meat company that they owned called Goat Masters Corporation. And allegedly. And one of my favorite facts, I didn't cue this image up, but you can look for it if you see online. The FBI subpoenaed all the records, and all they got was literally a handwritten note from her husband that says in its entirety, "To whom it may concern, there are no financial statements for Goat Masters Corporation." That is the end of the sentence. That is the end of the letter. He just signed it. Just like FBI subpoenas you, it's like, there are no financial statements for Goat Masters, to whom it may concern. So that was very suspect. They said, I don't think they pursued any charges. I haven't kept up to date on this one. She's not going to be seeking re-election. I think they're sort of letting her just, don't let the door hit
drift away. Yeah. I forget if it was your suggestion or what, but I recall after I learned about that through you wanting to get that statement like hand stitched and like placed in a frame on a wall or something like that. Just an absolutely perfect crazy Chicago story.
I have a list of famous Chicago quotes from politicians that I want to learn how to cross stitch. So I can sell cross stitch kits, so you can get these beautiful writings of like. Obviously, I pulled up the list. I mean, this is a literal list. I need to.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, we'll start with one everyone knows. I've got this thing and it's fucking golden. That is Rod Blagojevich, caught in an FBI wiretap, trying to sell the Senate seat of President-elect Barack Obama.
I still can't believe he's out of prison. I keep forgetting that, in fact.
My theory is that Trump commuted his sentence to set up legal precedent for commuting Roger Stone's sentence, but that's a bit in the weeds. So people could say, hey, you bailed your crony out, or you got your crony out, but then he said, hey, look, I did it for a Democrat. I don't know, that's just conspiracy theory. There are no financial statements for Goat Masters Corporation. I have tuition to pay and casinos to visit. Smiley face. That is former Chicago Public Schools CEO Barbara Byrd Bennett in a text. She went to prison on $22 million kickback scheme, steering contracts for old employer, school contracts in play for a 10% cut of the action. She was recently released as a safety measure. Some nonviolent offenders were released because of COVID. Because it's a danger in prisons. Let's see. Most aldermen, most politicians are hoes. FBI wiretap, Alderman Irina Troutman. That was a good one. Do you have a baloney company or something innocuous? That was one of the more recent quotes. It was one of the state senators caught in the red light red light camera scandal,
Oh,
taking
yeah.
bribes, Sandoval. And he was caught like basically talking about how to launder the money from bribes.
Jesus.
Then let's see. So did we land the tuna? That is another coded statement asking about if a contractor bribe or kickback. That is, I want to say, Ed Burke's.
I was going to say, yeah, it sounded like Burke.
I didn't
Allegedly.
expect my weird cross-stitch dreams to come up here, so I didn't have a lot of this. And then here's a famous quote about Chicago: "We don't want nobody sent." That is from the 50s, I want to say. Is
that Daly himself?
No, that was Ab Mikva. It was a federal judge, and there was this story about how he got into this whole he was one of the clean guys. Confirmation it was Burke. So he was one of the guys who clean guy. But he always would tell this story about how when he wanted to get into politics, he tried to volunteer at his ward office, and this cigar chomping ward boss said, "Who sent you?" It's like, nobody. It's like, we don't want nobody sent. So that was always his anecdote. And I just think it would look adorable on a little throw.
I definitely agree.
Unfortunately, it's hard, it's easier to make Twitter jokes about this than to actually learn how to cross stitch. Just saying. But okay, we got a sale from Bonnie. Let's do it. All right.
We got a whole
Chicago
Etsy shop.
Detours branded cross stitch. I will take my 110% commission.
Well, and I think I love to I love diving into your work, getting to know some of these stories has also sort of deepened my appreciation for when some of this nuttiness happens, and you just have that like moment of clarity where like, aha, this will go down as another chapter in the long book. Like, it's not quite corruption, but like Bobby Rush's Bobby Rush's couches during the unrest down on the South Side from a couple of months ago, where the CPD broke into his office and were just like lounging around for a couple of hours.
They were just chilling in his office, and their security cameras caught it.
Where like Illinois politics is so good at reducing it down into ridiculous images, ridiculous sound bites, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of the stuff, yes, his popcorn. Yes, it was Bobby Rush's popcorn. Thank you, Bill.
Also, Bobby Rush has a popcorn popper.
Right. I mean, God bless. But it's one of those qualities that I think when you approach it with some good investigation and with some fun, it can be entertaining, even as it makes your hair slowly fall out all over again, in my case. I want to thank you, of course, for being with us this evening, Paul. I had shared a couple of links to a few of the things you've worked on over the years. One to make sure to share as well, just because, like you had said, you've worked as a freelance journalist in the past. My favorite thing you've ever written, at least that I've come across, is a Chicago Reader article about the first murder in Chicago's history, the many deaths of Jean Lalime, who is a translator, if I'm recalling correctly, in the very early days of Chicago, back during the War of 1812. I dove deep into that a couple of years back and just want to make sure to share that with everybody. I put out the links for the podcast and the tour. I hope everybody gets the chance to dive into some of that, catch up on Paul's other work. Wanted to see if we had any other questions coming in here. We had a nice little conversation going. Wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Here we go. Bill is saying another cross stitch during city council hearings over who would succeed Harold Washington. Bobby Rush said there are deals and there are deals, which is a very nice Chicago.
And shameless self-promotion theater here. Episode 3 of the podcast. You can find it through the map that we shared. That I shared a link a little earlier.
I'll share that link directly one more time too.
Yeah, that entire episode actually was a 2-parter. Those 2 episodes were just one very long interview with David Orr, who was the vice mayor under Harold Washington, who died in the 80s, just going through the backstories of how that whole thing went down, which was pretty amazing. And so yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but some of it's interesting stuff. So listen to that episode for the Harold Washington stuff. It gets a lot of insider stuff.
All right, very good. Well, thank you everybody
Yep.
for joining us this evening for this little conversation. Thank you so much to Paul for joining us as well. We're still going at it with these sorts of fun events. I'll be back here on Thursday for our second to last installment of our architecture crash course, talking about Chicago's homes throughout the decades, the nearly 2 centuries that people have been living here in Chicago. And we've got some special paid events coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. I think on Friday, I'm doing our Chicago food history virtual tour, if anybody wants to tune back in for that. Beyond that, thank you all so much. You can find us on social media. You can find Paul on social media and Bill on social media as well. Like I was saying, they're all very good Twitter follows. And oh yeah, Roy saying could use Google Maps like Amanda and do virtual tours. Yeah, that's true. It's a wide open market. But thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you have a great evening. Glad everybody stayed safe during the big storms this evening as well. Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Bye.